Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about functions. So, what are functions? A function basically consists of a block of code that accepts some input, performs some kind of computation on this input to achieve a desired result or a desired output. Now, this way of thinking about functions might seem similar to how we sometimes think about programs. And that's not a coincidence. Functions are generally used to perform subtasks in your program. So your program might have a lot of parts to it, right? Performing one of those parts or one of the subtasks of your program is what you could use functions for. This is why functions are also known as subprograms or subroutines. Now, the thing that makes functions really useful is that a function actually encapsulates or groups together all these lines of code and gives them a name. Okay, so now you can use this name, the function name, along with the input you want to give to this function to use this function whenever you need to use these lines of code, right? This means that you don't have to keep writing these lines of code again and again if you want to use these lines of code on different inputs. All you have to do is make a function for it and use the function name along with your different inputs, right? So that is how function gives reusability in a program. This might seem a little abstract right now, but we'll discuss this very clearly using examples later on. But before that, let's see how functions in Python look like. So this is what a typical function in Python would look like. The first word here, def, lets the computer know that what you're writing now is actually a function and not a part of the main sequence of the program. Okay. The second word, func1, written in yellow here, is the name of the function. So this is what you would use to reuse or call the function, as we say in computer programming. Everything written in these yellow brackets are input variables. Okay, so this is the input data that the function func1 works on. Now we have a colon after that, which indicates that everything after that is actually the body of the function. The body of the function are the lines of the code that the function is trying to encapsulate. So this body is what works on these input variables var1, var2 and so on and achieves a desired result or calculates the answer given here in purple. So this answer could be any kind of data, okay, of any data type. And if you want to receive output from your function, you can use a statement like return answer, okay, where answer would be the output that this function would return. Let's now see some examples of how we actually use functions in code and how the progression of the program is different. Okay, so to see this, we'll actually use the same two problems that we've done before without functions, which is hello world and add two integers, but now we'll do them using functions. Okay, so we're back on HackerRank to the first program that we ever solved. Now all we want to do is solve this using functions. Okay, so a general kind of idea that we'll follow while writing programs with functions is that we'll write the main structure or the main sequence of the program. So we'll write the main program, and in that program, if we ever need to use some function, we'll imagine that there is a function like this which works and gives the correct output, and only later on will we try to implement this function. All right, so in this question what we need is we need to print hello world, right? So we don't need to accept any input. The only thing we need to do is write hello world to the screen. So I'm going to just assume that there will be a function called print hello, which uh, which I'm calling like this. Okay, so this is how you call functions. You just write the name of the function and you write brackets in front of this. Now inside these brackets, you write the inputs that the function requires. So our print hello function, what I wanted to do is this imaginary function that I haven't yet implemented. What I wanted to do is it shouldn't take any inputs. It should just write hello world onto the screen. Okay, and it doesn't give any outputs either. Okay, so I don't need to write any or write any input data in these brackets here, right? Because the function won't take any inputs. All I need to write is this much. Okay, so this in computer programming is known as a call to the function. Remember, we haven't written the function yet. So all I'm saying is that there is a function like this, print hello, and if I call it, it will print hello to the screen and it should work. Okay, so to write a successful program for printing hello, all I need to do is call this function once, right? Now this is all you need to do in the main sequence of your program. Okay, just this one line. But we haven't yet written or implemented this function called print hello. We only have to implement this function. So let's do that now. Okay, remember that your functions should come above the code that you write, above the main sequence or your main program that you're writing. All your function definitions should come before that as a general rule. Okay, so let's write def here, which lets the computer know that what I'm writing now is actually a function. Okay, and I'm going to write the function name that we used, print hello, and then I'm going to put brackets. So within these brackets, I also need to write some variables, right, that will accept the input given to the function. But since this function doesn't have any inputs, I don't need to write any accepting variables here. Then after that we write a colon so that we can start writing the body from the next line. Now in the body of the function, I need to write some code that achieves the desired result of writing hello world to the screen, right? So the only thing I need to write is print hello world. That's it. Okay, so when this function is called, it will start executing this body, right? And the first statement it will execute is print hello world. And after this, I actually don't want the function to do anything else, right? I don't even want to write any return answer kind of statement that we talked about previously, because this function doesn't need to give any output back to the main sequence of the program, right? So that's all that my function should be. And this is all that the code will be for writing hello world using a function. Okay, let's try to run this code. So great, we see that this works, and what we've done is we've learned about function calls. So the fourth line here is a function call to the function print hello, and we've learned about how to practically write functions. Okay, now let's move on to the second question. Okay, so now we're on the second question that we've discussed previously in the series called arithmetic operators, right? Now in this question, all we have to do is take two integers as inputs and print their sum, difference and product onto the screen. Okay, so now we want to try to solve this using functions. So let's try to write the main program, the main sequence of code, and let's assume any functions that we might need in the main sequence. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is accept my two integers. We've already seen this before. Okay, so num1 and num2 will now have the values of the two integers given as an input to this program. Okay, now what I need to do is calculate their sum, difference and product, right? So firstly, let's talk about their sum. Now let's assume that I have some function called add. Okay, this function takes two inputs. So here the inputs that I want to give it is num1 and num2. So this add function, it takes two inputs and it returns the summation or the sum of these two inputs, right? Now what will happen is this function add will actually return this value. Okay, so I would want the value that it returns back to this main sequence of program, back to where this function call is made, to be stored into some variable, right? So that I don't lose that value. So let's store it in some variable, let's say s. Okay, so what this fourth line is actually doing is it's making a call to the function add, okay, which takes in the two numbers num1 and num2 as input data and returns the sum of these two numbers num1 and num2 as the output. So that output that this function call returns will be stored in the variable s. Okay, now let's again try to find the difference. So we're going to do the same thing. Let's try to store the difference in a variable called d, and to find the difference we'll assume that there is some function that finds the difference between two numbers num1 and num2. Okay, so just how we talked about line 4, similarly for line 5, the function diff that is being called here will take in two inputs num1 and num2. It will return the difference of these two numbers as the output, and that value that it returns to the call here should be stored in the variable d. Okay, similarly we'll do the same thing for product. So let's say p is equal to some function prod that calculates the product of num1 and num2 and returns the product as the output. Okay, now all we need to do is print these three things on different lines, right? So we've seen how to do that too. So that's all that my main sequence of program should be, right? Calculate the sum, calculate the difference, calculate the product, and print the sum, difference and product, right? But we're still left with actually implementing or writing these functions, add, diff and prod, right? So let's start doing that. So let's start with the first function, add. So add takes in two inputs, remember? So I need to give two input variables here, two variables that will accept the input data given to it. So let's say that I'm calling those variables x and y. Okay, now within this function, num1 and num2 don't have any meaning. Okay, this function doesn't know that there are some variables called num1 and num2, like which are there in our main program. It doesn't know about these variables. It only knows about these input variables x and y. Okay, and whenever we make a call to the function, the data given in the call will be stored in these variables x and y respectively. So for example, in this call, num1 will be stored in the variable x and num2 will be stored in the variable y. Okay, so inside this function, the only two variables, the input variables that have sense are x and y. It doesn't know about num1 and num2, right? So now let's calculate the sum of x and y inside this function. So let's say answer is equal to x plus y, right? That's all we have to do. Now that we've calculated this answer, we also want to return this as the output of the function, right? So for that, we'll use a return statement like we discussed while discussing the structure of a function in Python. So all you need to do is do return answer like that. So that's it. Similarly, we can define the other functions diff where answer will be equal to x minus y and return the answer. Okay. Similarly, we can define the function prod, where answer will be equal to x into y, and then we can return the answer, right? So we've defined our three functions and we've written our main program that uses these three functions. So we should be done with our program, right? But let's try to submit our code now. It should pass. So it does pass on all the test cases. Lastly, I just want to discuss once the sequence of instructions that this program will take. Okay, this will help us gain better clarity about what functions are and how they are executed and how they receive input and return input. Okay, so let's just do that. The first line that is going to be executed in this program is going to be line 12. Okay, because all the lines above this are just functions. So the computer knows that this isn't a part of the main program. These are just function definitions and it'll ignore these. Okay, it'll start executing from this line num1. So num1 takes the input, num2 also takes the second input number. Then we come to line 15, right? What happens here is the first thing that will happen is the computer will make a call to the add function, okay, with the input data num1 and num2. Okay, so num1 and num2 will be the input data to this function add. What's going to happen in this call is that the value that is there in num1 is going to be sent to the x variable here, and the value in num2 is going to be sent to the y variable here in the function. Okay, and now the program is going to jump from line 15 to line 2. Okay, so it's going to jump into the function. Now the function will calculate answer as x plus y, okay, and it will return answer. So the value that it returns, okay, is going to go back to this function call. So the value that it returns is going to come here in the right hand side of line 15. So from line 3, the program jumps with the output value to line 15, or the call where we made the function call, right? And this value is going to be assigned to the left hand side variable, okay, is going to be assigned to the variable s. The similar thing is going to happen for diff and prod. Okay, so the diff function will take in these input variables num1 and num2. Num1 and num2, the values of these will be passed to x and y, and an answer will be calculated which will be returned to this call on line 16, and that answer will be assigned to this variable d. Similarly for the 17th line, the same thing but with the prod function. Okay, and after we've done that, we just print s, d and p. So that's all. That's how functions work. That's how functions accept input, return input, and that's how we can use the output given by functions in our program. Okay, so that's all for these examples. Thank you everyone for watching this video. We still have more to talk about functions, so look forward to the next video.